And we are back watching round two of Set Roulette live here. We have once again opted to join the mono green player as we see Louis Bach attacking with green creatures once again against a green black deck out of Cletus the Black. Anders, what can we expect to see out of this green black deck?
Let me just quickly pull it up. Sorry. There we go. The Rockman is the deck name. I love it. We're looking at a few planeswalkers, a lot of creatures. We see one Liliana Necromancer, one Vivian Reed, and for enchantments we see one Phyrexian Scriptures and one the Eldest Reborn. And we see three Inquisition of Coslic, three Cabal Therapy, four Greens and Senate, two Cast Down, two Go for the Throat, and then 19 creatures.
Good old fashioned fair gaming with the rock.
Yeah, Phyrexian Scriptures really doing its best Plague Wind impression here.
This one I have to read.
I tested it a bit. So if you play creatures yourself, but you just want to kill everything, it's your go-to. It's also for sure to ruin Vengevine's day.
One of the only ways to
After,
remove graveyards from the game in the format.
yeah, unfortunately, it's not as well timed as you want it to. Um, but it can definitely throw a wrench in the works of some decks.
And of course, adding black to your green deck does give you access to Cabal Therapy, perhaps one of the most important cards in the format.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a reason to go into black for a lot of players. We see a miss here. Um, oh, do you wanna do it, Claytis? Do you wanna exchange this land royals for the two droid of the cowl, or maybe even the Greens and Senate? They are considering it. They opted not to,
How much do we
but
value this Llanowar Elf? It seems like more than we value the opponent having access to the cards in their hand.
yeah, there's definitely some heavy hitters here. Going into black, you know what you also get access to, for example, Massacre Room.
Massacre Worm, very powerful against a lot of elves, although notably not powerful against Druid of the Cowl.
It's not
Still acceptable.
excellent. Still acceptable. Still a massive beat stick. There's also Pelaga Worm here, Steel Leaf Champion. So there's definitely some reasons to have it, but can't say we will be too happy. Okay, now we need to take care of this Vivian Reed, I assume.
Yeah, I have to assume that the Vivian Reed out of the opponent is more frightening than Llanowar Elves is valuable, but we'll see what happens. Inquisition of Kozilek joining its best friend Cabal Therapy there, uh, letting you know
Okay, it's
what to name with the Cabal Therapy.
yeah, it's beautiful, but apparently this has to be the most valuable land royals I've ever seen. Uh, Obviously we don't know Cleese's hand. They might actually need it. They might have Pelagia Worm and just go like, I just need to draw land and then get it. Um, Revealing Vengevine is just rude. Now they discard Vengevine.
Do we see another Cabal Therapy naming Vengevine?
I don't
Based
think we
on
will.
not
Not here.
discarding Vivian Reed, I will assume no, but we'll see.
Uh, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. I'm trying to figure out why. There's also Glister the Traitor in this deck. Oh, that's a beautiful card. First strike, dead touch, just absolutely no, can't touch this. Don't come here. Just actual mode.
It's possible that Cletus was trying to set up a situation where they remove the Druid of the Cowl and then Eldest Reborn the Vivian Reed. Um, but it's hard to say exactly what's going on or why Cabal Therapy hasn't been flashed back. But
I mean, I have to assume there's a 7 drop in Clace's hand.
mhm.
It's or that they think that they need to draw to it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously we don't we can't see inside the player's head. Um,
And we also can't see inside their hands, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they have
Yeah,
a strong play
they
in mind that puts a
they
little more weight on the Elena Worlds than we can looking at this empty board.
yeah they definitely they also know their deck better than we know it, so
Yeah.
we have to assume that they've tested it quite a lot throughout the weeks, throughout the past 2 weeks. Once again, reminding everyone that we are moving to a 2 week testing schedule for set roulettes from now on, um, and we will do so if we choose to hold future ones.
And we
This
are
is also the
looking
last.
at hosting more events in uh, the spring. So trying to do these somewhat regularly, if not every month, to host
Yeah,
additional events. And so we may have more news on that down the road in the stream as we get a little closer to the end of the.
there'll definitely be news around later in the stream.
Yeah.
You know,
One
it's all about
thing
that viewer retention.
one thing I know is that um, we did accidentally conflict with some major events here in the States, and so being mindful to schedule around some of these competitive level events, since so many of set roulette's people who love set roulette are uh, also grinders still.
Yeah, it's not only for washed grinders, it's also for reborn
Active
grinders.
grinders. Yeah.
So we see the best way to get Ventrine out of the graveyard for the opponent is to just reanimate it on your own side of the board, thanks to the Ellis Reborn.
Don't knock it till you
But
tried it.
Cletus, yeah, but Cletus seems to have a bit of an issue here because this Vivian is just quietly ticking up, generating card advantage, and soon will just create her emblem.
And we may just be seeing some additional Elvish Clan callers being summoned to the battlefield here.
Yeah, I mean, does what it says on the tin. It calls its clan, right?
Vivian Reed is a very powerful card in these kind of mid-range on mid-range battles, giving you uh, the creatures that it needs to defend itself, and then building towards an ultimate that does break these ground stalls.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, Cleese needs something to happen here, and he needs it to happen quite soon. So I'm already looking at their sideboard, seeing what they have to work with. They have some more removal spells, notably Bile Blight and Consume the Meek, which is an interesting choice. They might choose to board into more like a green-black control deck with more planeswalkers. They also have Throne and Vivian Reed. Oh, Kalni Hydra comes here. This is for sure to ruin Cletus' day. This is bigger than anything else on the board. And now Greens and Zenith for doesn't even care to this was Steel Leaf Champion, of course. There needs to be something good here. Woodland Cemetery shows up, and that's part of the interesting nature of this set red around, because we have the enemy colored check lands from Dominaria, and then we have like some temples from Born of the Gods, and that's about it for like true constructed level dual lands. And then we have Evolving Wilds, which is sure to show up when, well, nothing else is available.
Or when you need to add
Uh,
cards to the graveyard to hit threshold.
exactly. When it's the best fetch you have, it's still a fetch.
When all the best lands are tap lands, that's when you see cards like Call Me Hydra and Steel Leaf uh, Channeler come out and really show their power. If you want to play all your lands tapped, that's fine with me. I will just cast a 5/4 on turn 3
Or even
or
turn 2,
2.
thanks to Lamrel. Yeah, that's the thing about this format. You see these monocolored, very streamlined decks trying to fight against two or three colored decks that are a bit slower, so they need to go a bit bigger. But then green is just like, I don't care. I have an 8/8. How are you?
Yeah, so far,
Um,
really impressed with what I'm seeing out of these green decks.
yeah, and no no doubt how these two guys figure like they must have tested together, must
Hmm.
have come to the same conclusion. This green deck is fast enough to just beat face. And I'm hoping we get to see them fight against some of the blue decks because that's been like our at least in testing boogeyman. Um, these Teferi
Some of the Nexus of Fate shells
next to
that we've
Fate
seen.
shells. This has seen a lot of interesting way to build those decks and do something completely um off the beaten path stuff. Doesn't doesn't really play the same game of Magic as everyone else. So I'm looking forward to see how these two powerhouses will clash.
So, as the player
And
sideboard, what do we expect to see come in out of this green black deck to battle the Elven Menace?
yeah, I'm definitely looking at these two bio blights in Clay's sideboard. I was
Mm.
like, yes, get sign me up, coach. Uh, and I think the whole sideboard plan will try to take on a more controlling role. So we'll see two Consuming Meek. There's also two Consuming Vapors. That's a bit. I mean, it's going to be super awkward against Lanoels, but if you plan to kill them anyways, then Consuming Vapors can take the big stuff. So it might be okay depending on how exactly you visualize your games play out.
Not powerful
There's
on
also
on a blank slate, but if you have bio blighted all the little elves away, it starts to look a lot better.
yeah, but there's only two Bile Blights and like two Cast Down, two Go for the Throat, and then there's one Massacre Worm, and it's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be very situational if it's good.
Are we
But
looking at
there's
any
also
changes out of the elves deck out of Louis' shell here?
let me quickly pull it up. I'm sure there'll be some changes, but if Billy wanted to, or if my browser wants to help me here, uh, maybe more Vengevines, as we saw earlier. They're really powerful against all this black removal, so I can definitely see more Vengevine coming in. Another Vivian Reed maybe to try and grind.
Sure.
Um, Karn, like the Elf deck might also get some of these resilient threats. Um,
And with these linear strategies, a lot of times what you're trying to do is just tweak a card here or there, optimize a little bit without changing too much in the deck, right?
yeah, exactly. So it's gonna be a lot of what kind of game plan Louise wants to work with. Um, how do they expect to play it out? Like they hadn't pulled out their aspect of Hydra, you see, so they're still in the deck. It would be one of the things where if I'm afraid of a lot of spot removal, I might be like, okay, maybe it's not aspect of the Hydra's time to shine in this matchup. But Louise is this signals to me that Louise hasn't boarded in a card like Karn, for example. Um, but is instead working more with just the more like the same we saw in game one. Maybe pulling in the Vengevines just to fight all this discard and spot removal to give some resiliency.
So far,
And
we
we actually
haven't
see
seen
Cabal.
Cabal Therapy do enough against this deck, but maybe this is the game where it changes. Although Cabal Therapy taking Vengevine, it looks like.
Yeah, uh, and now we see Cabal Therapy flashback. I imagine taking Vivian Reed, leaving Louise
Vivian
with
doing so much
Forest,
work last game, I can't imagine he leaves it in hand.
and now we see Louise left with Forest, an aspect of the Hydra. Um,
Not the most aggressive hand that Louis can have, but we'll see. As we mentioned, top of the deck is a very powerful force in these games, especially
and a
with the black decks often going down on resources in order to trade one for one with
yeah,
cards.
yeah, it's a cruel, cruel mistress. But let's see what Cleese's brings to the table here. Course of Crufix,
A good way to recover.
but no land. Oh, that's a disaster. I can't imagine that's what they wanted.
But this aspect of Hydra, not especially scary now, but does threaten to be quite frightening later on. So Cabal Therapy giving Cletus a way to deal with that before it gets too dangerous. And the board is being held down nicely by the Courser. So for the time being anyway, they seem to be in a decent enough position.
Yeah, this looks almost like the only thing that the Claces want here is just to hit their land drops. Did they just draw like is that another Cabal Therapy on top? I mean, it's almost rude at this point. Yeah, we know the aspect of Hydra is there. Get it out of there. Yeah, and leaving
Leaving just
Louise
a
with another
forest.
forest. I mean, they can't be happy about this. Yeah, like your opponent is feeling way too confident when Cause of Krufix starts turning sideways. It's like this is not this is not okay. Louise needs something to get him down a peg.
Uh, Although notably, Louis is within Colony Hydra range, right? Because this derogatory speaker has leveled all the way up, all it takes is one good draw and they're right back in this game.
Yeah, yeah, and now we're in the interesting question: has Louise sandbag a creature? There's a Venturine in the graveyard. I cannot wait to see what Cleesus comes up with here. There's three non-lands in hand. We know one of them is Cabal Therapy.
Potentially
They're
stuck on black here, knowing they
a
have
bit
some
stuck
double
on black.
black spells in their deck.
Yeah, they have opted not to run any Evolving Wilds in their deck. We're just looking at 10 Forest, 9 Swarms, 4 Woodland Cemetery.
Eldritch Reborn threatening to bring a Vivian back, this time on Cletus's side of the board. I'm sure that the Rock will love having that card in play.
Yeah, the Rock does love just love having that kind of play. Love it that much. They have one in the sideboard and one in the main deck. And I imagine for this matchup there will be two in the deck.
And this does put a clock on Louis and the top of their deck to find something meaningful before
Yeah.
Chapter 3 ticks in and Vivian starts doing her dirty work.
Yes. And then there's Greenstone Synth coming next, with the option for what will that be getting? They'll be getting a green 6 drop potentially. Probably just get like it could get Gawclaw or a Glisser or something like that. Um, or might hold on to it until it can get Pelagaboom. And this is, I can't imagine this is how Louise wanted the game to play out.
No, you don't want your derogatory speaker to be blocking, you want it to be tapping.
Yeah, well, it is a 1/4 now, so
it,
that's also
it
an option.
it blocks just fine, but there are different ways you'd like to spend your time.
Yeah.
5 mana from
Green Suns for 4. Then we're seeing Gawclaw, Terra of Qualsisma coming down here.
Bravo for pronouncing the entirety of that card's name.
So, creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. So, this Pelagaboom we're seeing here is coming down next turn.
No need to
Uh,
green send Zenith for Palaka Worm if you can just put it on top of your deck.
yeah,
So next turn
definitely.
we're threatening to see a Vivian and a Palaka Worm, potentially even a Vengevine if we just really want to turn the heat up on the aggression here. But no, we do
Yeah,
opt for the Vivian.
yeah.
I like that play.
So do I. We definitely see Vivian take up here. We don't want another Gawclaw. It's a legendary,
No, and we
so
want
get
to
it. Get
change the top of our deck for that Corsair Crufix as well.
yeah. Ah, would have loved to have a land here. We might get it next turn. And I imagine we'll just yeah.
Yep, things
Louis
have
has seen
gotten out of
enough.
hand.
You know what, son? That's quite all right.
Well,
So
you're
now
quite
we're
right
seeing three
about
Sounds of
seeing
King.
a little more controlling posture out of the green black deck there. Vivian being powerful on both sides of the board in this match.
Yeah, we've seen the two ways of how these players wish their decks to play out. We see interesting no reconfigurations for game three, so they're choosing to do the same thing they did on the play as on the draw. And they didn't feel like they didn't learn any new lessons from the sideboard game, so they're opting for the same configuration. Often you see players, especially in like these unexplored formats, they might whiff around a bit and like, maybe I want to try out another card, because the odds that you have tested versus exactly your opponent's lists they're not great when you're playing Set Roulette. You might have tested versus something similar, but something similar and something exactly the same might mean the difference between like changing one or two cards, and the cards need to be in your deck if you want to draw them.
Well, and that can be a really big switch in how a matchup plays out. Just changing four of one card for four of another could swing a matchup, very significantly, especially in some of these decks that take the game late into turns.
Yeah, and I know now that Luis still has Aspect of the Hydra in the deck. So Cletus will play around making that card as bad as possible, like really constraining the amount of creatures that Luis has available. And now just
First strike, death
sure,
touch, very, very strong
let me just
combination of
play.
abilities.
Let me just play 3-mana mode here. Don't mind if I do.
Glissa,
Well, not quite mode.
Glissa's artifact synergy is not as powerful in this format as we might all hope for, but First Strike and Death Touch is very powerful, especially in a format where so many players are playing Wall of Omens and Overgrown Battlements, and 4 toughness seems to be the name of the game. And it's difficult for a lot of strategies to push through 4 toughness creatures, but not here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Glissa's artifact ability is just flavor text in this deck. There's 0 artifacts. It is straight up flavor text.
Cletus deciding that a 3/3 First Strike Death Touch is good enough anyway, and hard to argue seeing what it's doing on this board.
Yeah, can't really argue against it.
Is this going to be a Vivian? We have 5 mana.
It's just going to be a 5-mana Pelagavum.
That'll do.
Thanks to Goldclaw Terror Kalkisma, sorry.
Very cool. Very cool. Goreclaw getting its day in the sun thanks to Set Roulette.
Yeah, like this is what you want to do, right? I'm playing Goreclaw. What do I want to follow it up with? Rat, S7 drop that I just casually play out on turn 5. Because I don't care about your gods or your mana.
Although, as we mentioned, the green deck does have the ability to go over the top of Pelakka Worm, so from here it just becomes a battle of grinding it out and who can win the long game. Eldritch Clancaller, pretty strong in building up that army, but will we see some counterplay out of the green-black deck from Cletus in the form of, here we're seeing a Courser of Kruphix.
Cletus definitely need to get a handle on this Eldritch Clancaller, or it will get out of hand for them. But Glissa is holding the fort for now. 27 life. Your lifestyle is a resource. You don't need to block stuff you don't trade efficiently with. But this Clancaller can get out of hand. Notice that Luis is at 1 card in hand, so it's basically down to this Clancaller. Cletus still has 3 cards in hand, and like some of them could be lands, some of them could be something else.
Massacre Worm potentially getting a lot worse with Clancaller active here as well.
Yeah, Massacre Worm kind of needs to come down this turn in order to handle Clancaller, because it will get to 3 and just next turn actually. Cletus seems to be a bit Cabal Therapy flooded here. like turn 6 is not the perfect Cabal Therapy turn. I'm gonna side with Cleases there. And it's also an argument for, do you want 3, 4, 2? How many do you want in your deck? We see Cleases has access to 3 in their 75 and have opted to have all 3 in. Um,
Even with the clan callers going, Cletus still has a little bit of time here thanks to this Glissa, which is making attacks less profitable.
yeah, like, is Lee's going to just right-click attack all?
But a
Okay,
Vivian
so
Reed really does put some
that's a
serious
whole
pressure
nother
on
story.
Cletus.
Oh, and it destroys the core. So,
Why not?
that's just straight rude. We know there's a
Drawing a
Cabal
Cabal
Therapy here.
Therapy here.
Yeah, that's blank. And I think we have to see some attacks here.
But what attacks could they make? There is not a profitable attack, is there? I mean,
I would like to see Glither just run into Vivian Reed. So the way damage assignment work with that such is you can't just assign one. So Glither would need to be quadruple blocked.
and given the
And
actual creatures that exist, I think it would have to be the full octagon block here.
it will be the Pentagon block, yes. Because it would be one Steel Leaf Champion, one Steel Leaf Champion, one to Druid of the Cowl, and then the 2 Elvish class Clan Callers. So I imagine we would see one Steel Leaf, one to Steel Leaf, one to Elvish Clan Caller if that block were to happen. That means you can also attack with Pelagabloom.
Palaka Worm probably not going to trade with a Seal Leaf Champion any more profitably than it can this turn. So the attack does make sense, although Louis can just throw a Druid in the way of it.
As well.
Although it does have trample, so actually we do need to see some kind of a block here.
Yeah. I hope Cletus isn't listening to the stream. But yeah, this is the attack I would love to make here. I think you're guaranteed to get rid of Vivian, and Louise will just let everything run through. You do also have the option to run into Louise, but I don't think that's. I think that's not where the game is at this point.
No, you can't attack the life total when Vivian Reed is.
I mean, you can, but
you're not winning a race here, right? With 7/6 Steel Leaf champions that are threatening to get bigger every turn.
It's more that there's still enough game to be played. I can see making, and I can see why Cleese is thinking at least, because it's actually a real consideration. If this just runs through, it's half Louise's life total. But then you allow Louise to have. Okay. Wait, what does Goldclaw exactly say? Each creature controlled by 4 greater. Well, this will just get eaten, my mate. Yeah. Wait.
Well, it depends on if we're worried about the Pentagon block, right?
Well, I think you're okay trading your Glissa with the 3 most important creatures on the opponent's side of the board. I'm not quite sure why Gawklor is here, but I think it's like this will just get eaten and then Nissa will die.
Well, it makes the Palaka Worm big enough that Steel Leaf Champion can't just trade 1 for 1 with it.
True.
So maybe it's.
So you'd rather trade that than Palaka Worm? I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, this block then means that it'll actually trade with the Steel Leaf Champion. Okay, I can see why things are the way they are.
As we mentioned, there's a reason that these players are familiar with their decks, and we're just following along this attack. Not looking bad here.
No, the whole complicated. The whole math is for blockers. If you just say that every time you attack, you will lose more games, because yeah, stuff like this happens. And I imagine Cletus was like, if I attack like this, then he will block like this. All right, what if I attack like this, then he'll block like that, and then trying to put yourself in the other player's shoes. Um,
So we now get to take out both of the Sea Leaf Channelers, but we do leave the Elvish Clan Caller behind. That being said, this
yeah, we
Glissa is now a formidable threat for the Vivian Reed.
it is yes. There's no pressure from Luis right now. That's down the line. We will see more Elvish Clan callers.
But Vivian does get
Um,
another activation, which does threaten to create more defenses for the Planeswalker.
yeah.
And Colony
God.
Hydra, as if summoned,
Well,
enters the battlefield.
it's just 8/8 Trample. Blizzard still has first strike death
Glissa
touch.
still does get right past that Colony Hydra, although it does threaten to make it a painful attack.
Yeah, but you just gained 7 lives from your Pelagorworm. You're 28. You can take 8 and still be at your starting life total. No
While
attacks.
that's true, you could see Elvish Clan Caller sort of stall that Glissa for long enough that how many times are you willing to take 8 to keep making that attack?
Yeah, definitely. I think Clay chose not to attack, and I think it will just always be not attack because now there's just random fodder. Okay, another Gawclaw.
We know Cabal Therapy is still lurking in Cletus's hand.
Yeah, there's an unknown card in Luis's hand. We see the Clan Caller activation. It'll just quietly grow everything. And I can understand why Cleese made the play of not attacking a few turns ago, but see where this has led us. Now the board is just quietly growing. Vivian is activating every turn. Clan Caller is activating every turn, and there's only so much green beef a Glisa can hold down. Vengevine and leveling up the Tree Speaker.
Just
I mean, that's
continuing to
also
use that mana every turn.
yeah, and like with 2 Clan Callers on the board, Tree Speaker is a sizable threat as well. What is Cletus drawing to? I think Cletus is drawing to Phyrexian Scriptures. Or if they board it in.
Do we have any Black Sun
Maybe.
Zeniths or
There's Consume the Meek, but that would leave you with. That would leave Cletus with Gawclaw and Luis with
Colony Hydra?
Vengevine, Kalni Hydra, and Vivian.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's not greatest.
So Scriptures, we're thinking, is probably the card that Cletus is hoping to draw here.
Yeah.
Now that Cabal Therapy does come out, get rid of any aspect of Hydra's lurking in hand.
Yeah, that's has to be what they're afraid of.
No, just a backup Vivian in case your Glissa ever did connect.
Yeah. I mean, sure, you get it out of hand, but was it ever going to be played this game anyways? I mean,
If you're going to
you
win
have
the
to get it
game,
out
you
of
have
hand.
to deal with it eventually.
Yes. Yeah, Druid of the Cowl shows up.
Even Druid showing up as a 3/5
Yeah.
and a
How
second
does
Colony
this
Hydra. It's looking bleak.
0 mana
Looking bleak for the
Kalni
green
Hydra?
black deck.
I mean, yeah, this is not
At this point,
excellent.
even if you draw the Scriptures, do you have time? Can you survive?
I'd like to imagine that you can.
Perhaps at a low life
But
total.
it has to be next turn. Otherwise, the
Yeah.
Vivian will also ultimate. It's basically this top card needs to be Scriptures. It was not.
It was a Llanowar Elves. So the players will continue the game, but do do we have any outs on Cletus's side at this point? I
Um,
expect we're going to see attacks this turn.
I don't think we will see attacks. I think Luis is perfectly content just waiting a few more turns, ultimating Vivian, and just shoving it in there. No need to risk anything. Because the way Luis
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. I
loose,
see.
it's just something going wrong in combat, and then Clace is drawing a removal spell, and suddenly you don't have a Vivian, or um, you get some way of wait, what was this? Yeah, you get some way of suddenly things goes wrong. You are perfectly content as Luis just
We're
sitting
not
here.
quite at lethal with a single attack yet, so
Yeah, exactly.
you can be patient.
My point exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a great showcasing of how these different decks wants to play. Cletus does not want to play his Cabal Therapy on turn 6. He wants them to play them on turn 1 and 2 and 3 and just rip everything apart and destroy what's left over.
And we saw that work quite well for them in game 2, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, Vivian Reed seems to be winning any of the games it's on. And in fact, we do see, because of that Vengevine draw, uh,
Yeah.
a full attack, which I think is exactly 28, but don't quote me on that math. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. We need a hotline to Frank Karsten to just
There's some deep
get that on.
statistical analysis to be done on this particular combat step.
Yeah. Um, there's an interesting line here where if you block a Clan Caller with Glissa, then the Clan Caller will die before damage due to first strike
Mm-hmm.
damage. And then that would change the maths. But, you know, the Calneo Hydra was an 8/8, so that also works, blocking
Yep.
that. The Mean Green Machine takes it down. Uh, was that our entire... Was that really everyone? Did we just have one match this round? Everyone is so quick.